was reading David Foreman last night, it struck me I have always had trouble with this story, and he just sort of brought it all together, and I hope I will do that for you. Hagar, you all remember, was Sarah's servant. When Sarah, of course, could not conceive, she said, well, let's try this with Hagar and see if that'll work. And of course, when Hagar gets pregnant, Hagar starts strutting her stuff, and that annoys Sarah. So Sarah starts mistreating her. She runs away, and she goes into the desert, and she meets an angel who says, you need to go back to your mistress because I will watch over your child. So that was last week's Torah portion. And so now this week's Torah portion, we have the birth of Isaac, but as part of that process, Ishmael is 13, 14 years old. So he has been around for a while. When Isaac is circumcised, Sarah sees Ishmael, various translations. The word is laughing in Hebrew. It's sometimes translated as scoffing. It's sometimes translated as mocking. So Ishmael is laughing with Isaac, and that sends Sarah into a tizzy, and she says, I want that woman and her child out of the camp. Now, having said all that, Rabbi Foreman's conclusion is this is the setup for the Egyptian exile. That's what I would like to go through with you. The first thing is Abraham and Sarah have treated Hagar shamefully. She has virtually no say in whether or not Abraham cohabits with her. So she has no choice in that. Then Sarah gets all sorts of crosswise about it, and so they finally ship her off, just throw her out of the camp. After she has been impregnated through no choice of her own, has borne a son to Abraham, who has grown up now for some 13 or 14 years. So she has been this kid's mother for 13 or 14 years, and Abraham clearly loves his son, but then just throws him out. Furthermore, Abraham is a wealthy man. And when they get thrown out, she goes out with a loaf of bread and a skin of water. So he sends his son away with his son's mother with basically nothing, and just ships him off into the, this is not good. I understand that there's conflict between Hagar and Sarah is the top gal in the, she's the boss cow in the herd. So Hagar is perhaps not being as clever as she possibly could be, but even so, taking the mother of your child, giving her a loaf of bread and a canteen full of water and saying, take a hike, that's not right. The key to all this, which I never realized until I saw Foreman, is what does Hagar's name mean? Hebrew names have a meaning. And her name, we pronounce it Hagar. It's actually Ha-gar, the stranger. So her name is the stranger. And oh, by the way, after Israel comes out of Egypt, what does it get told over and over and over again by God? You can't mistreat the stranger. So Abraham and Sarah mistreat the stranger. And oh, by the way, she happens to be an Egyptian. But the operative thing is here that they are mistreating a stranger, that they have power over. And the deal about not mistreating the stranger is when a stranger comes into your land, he doesn't have connections, he doesn't have family, he doesn't have people that he can rally around him and defend him. He is defenseless. And so the prohibition is you cannot mistreat a stranger. And that's what Abraham and Sarah do, is they mistreat a stranger. The next thing that happens, and it's very interesting how it's said here. The next morning, he took bread and a skin of water, and what did he do with them? Put it on her shoulders. Who else leaves slavery with bread on their shoulders? They had put the bread on their shoulders because it does not have time to rise, remember? They carry their kneading bowls on their shoulders with the bread. Where does Israel go when they come out of slavery? Into the desert. Where does Hagar go? What happens to Israel when they are lost in the desert? They have no water. What happens to Hagar? She runs out of water. What do the Israelites do when they run out of water? Cry to Moses and God gets them water. What does Hagar do? Cries, and who gets her water? Yeah, it's Ishmael's voice that they listen that God listens to. I understand that. That brings us to the last thing. What is the thing that breaks Israel free from slavery? The death of the firstborn. What is Ishmael? The firstborn. And what happens? She goes out into the desert and says, I am going to sit over here because I cannot watch him die. So what Foreman is suggesting, and I say until he laid it out that way, I never saw it. And so what's happening with this story of Hagar, starting clear back when she was impregnated by Abraham, is it is setting up what's going to happen to Israel in Egypt.